Safety first. As per the last census, the Indian workforce is over 400 million strong. By 2024, that number could very well cross 600 million, a 39.1% of the total Indian population. Over 42% work in heavy industries, use heavy machines, cope industrial hazards. A 17% of India's GDP comes from manufacturing industries. Safety is the first aid of the uninjured. Safety tops all the priorities in industrial sector. Worldwide, we have 340 million occupational accidents and 160 million victims of work-related illnesses annually. 6,000 die every day. Safety is a challenge. Be it any industry, organization, or an employee, everyone needs to be safe. Humans do, machines do. Industrial safety parameters are getting complex with each passing day. Elimination of industrial hazards is a dire necessity. Prevention of work-related injury is a prerequisite. Ask Abhinav Dar, a manager from one of the Fortune 100 companies, who lost his employee to a fatal industrial accident. His workers lost morale. His company lost productivity by 20%. Questions stare right into our eyes. How to be safe? What is the solution? Who can keep us safe? Maybe God can, but we try too. We provide solutions. We help keep the industry safe and give you round-the-clock visibility of your assets. We are the Hack Lab Solutions. We follow a 360-degree approach, considering all the three dimensions of safety implementation: management, machines, and workers. With advancement of AI, next-gen automation is all about machines and humans coexisting, each taking care of the other. Our aim, hence, is safety for productivity. We use IoT hardware integration with sharp AI edge processing, real-time environment monitoring, data insights, and worker safety profiling. We estimate risk, employ professionals, analyze scenarios, and provide solutions. Our systems can predict failures, warn you, and take action. Our suite of tracker products cater to major Fortune 500 companies and several industrial sectors ranging from FMCG, logistics, mining to metals, and manufacturing. Our safety product verticals include collision avoidance system, pedestrian alert system, AI-based compliance monitoring, safety interlocks, and smart traffic management system. Our security product verticals include tracker tags, smart tracker cam, tracker PA system. We have been recognized as the best Indian startup in the automation domain by Technovation Awards conducted by India Electronics and Semiconductor Association, IESA. We won the award for the best company in Innovation Showcase category by SIIC I-10-4. We have gained trust of clients like Unilever, ITC, Hindalco Industries, and top Fortune 500 companies availing our products and services.
Everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome to the fourth podcast of Hack Lab Solutions. Today we have with us Mr. Vikram Rastogi, who is the founder and CEO of Hack Lab Solutions, and Mr. Ganesh, who is a coach, mentor, and leadership consultant with 40 years of experience of leading businesses in South Asia and Asia Pacific region. Today, our topic of discussion is transformation of industrial safety in India. Let's start our conversation with a very simple question. What are some of the key factors that are driving transformation in the industrial safety space within the Indian manufacturing sector? So, Ganesh sir, we would like to start with you.
Sure. It's a very good question actually, and there are many factors, and many of them are common to what happened in the world. but some of them are unique and new to India. So let me start with some of the common factors. The first one is the scale of manufacturing. As it's rapidly increasing, as India is producing much more than what they used to manufacture in the past. So the associated risks and hazards are also going up. And because of that, people have to be conscious about safety. That is same like what happened in many other countries. The second is also the level of awareness and education with global exposure, globalization, being part of a global supply chain, the safety impact on or lack of safety impact on manufacturing is much more visible, much more higher, and much more derailing businesses. And that is another reason, which again is like what happened in many of the countries, and that's part of the trend. But more than that, there are a few things which I'm sure Vikram will add many more. But let me just tell you a couple of top of my mind things. Number one, the problem of hiring retention is hitting manufacturing industry much more than what was happening earlier because the employees would like to choose their employers. Employees today in 21st century have many more choice, and so they would like to choose the place where they can contribute and be safe. It is no more like a blind loyalty which is driving the employee population, and that is a huge reason why if you want to hire the right people, you need to have the right safety practices because it becomes very visible when people come in to the plant manufacturing site. They could see and perceive the difference in safety, and that makes them take decisions whether to stay long or not. So retention and hiring is one biggest reason which is happening in India because of choice people have got. Second, the media advocacy, the exposure, so many 24/7 news channels there. So any incident happening, any part of India becomes known to everybody else, and that hits the brand because brand is linked to safety, and that is again the media advocacy is the reason which is driving. I don't know many countries like India where you have so many 24/7, so many regional channels, so many news channels looking for news. So any safety incident becomes a news, and that is a big driving force. There are a few other factors. Maybe Vikram, if you add up, then we can discuss that further.
So, from my understanding, what I get from whatever discussions I had have with all the top management people that we are interacting with, there are few key changes that are happening right now. One, obviously, is there is a lot of labor laws and labor changes that are happening, because of which a lot of requirements, both from the government side and also from the corporate side. So, because of brand management and all, there are a lot of changes coming up in the industrial safety sector as well within India, because a lot of global MNCs are becoming a part of the manufacturing sector in India. So they are bringing in culture not just specifically for the Indian market, but also they are bringing in their global culture. And because many of the advanced countries have advanced standards, so they are bringing those standards in India as well. So that is one of the major transformation that I am seeing right now. Many of the companies who are setting up manufacturing plants are in India are following advanced safety practices as well. That is something which is definitely changing. Apart from that, there is one major change that is happening, that is because of the changes in the technology that is there. Earlier, to do any kind of safety implementation, there has to be a lot of like regulations that have to be set up, and to train people it takes time. To make sure that you have the processes in place, that takes time. But with the help of technology, India is able to leap forward in that sense. So let's say with the help of AI, with the help of IoT, a lot of things which earlier we were depending on people or processes which takes time to learn and which takes time to work with, that changes over time. So now with the help of technology we are able to do it much faster. So things which would take decades to set in, so companies in US have standards where they don't need, because of the training that they do and because of the processes that they have, the culture that they have, they don't need so much of supervision. But in India, because we don't have that processes in place. So we need supervision, and with the help of technology, that supervision is becoming much more easily doable in today's environment. So that's what I am seeing, that these are the transformations that are happening in the industrial safety side over last years. I have seen and I have discussed with a lot of other people as well. These are the key transformations that are happening. Apart from that, there are some more changes that are coming up because of government policies as well. As we are becoming more and more developed in our policy framework, there are rules and regulations that are also getting updated, but that is happening very slowly. I feel that a lot more can be done there, and a lot of laws can be implemented to safeguard the rights of people when they are working in a hazardous or a unsafe environment. But that also is happening. So that is from my perspective what I see is happening in the safety area right now.
Yeah, actually, I would confirm a couple of factors which you have said. I go back to one of my discussions in early 2000. I don't want to name the company. It's one of the global player, Indian company, a global player, probably size-wise as big as many of the global companies today. And I had an opportunity to be in a meeting with the CEO of that company, the chairman of the owner of the company. And he said one thing, I'm talking about 2004 or 2005. He said, I would like to have a situation where I sit in my cabin and I can have many televisions on my walls and I can look at each of my plant and then look at what is happening with respect to safety in each of the plant. You won't believe it. I had a few overseas consultants with me, highly educated, highly experienced people with me. And outside of that meeting, we were actually laughing at it. We said, is that possible? Is that possible? Is what we're wondering. Maybe he's dreaming something which is seems to be difficult. This is 2005. And 2020, I was in a company, much smaller company. They had their plant in Pondicherry and they had their office in Chennai. The Chennai office of the CEO had big screens on his walls and he could see everything happening in his plant on his six televisions sitting in Chennai. So, what was 2005 a concept has become a reality and not in a big company, but even in a small company. So that is what I think the technology change that's happening. And only thing is that it is affordable. Earlier it was not affordable. CCTV today is so affordable. You talk about anything technology is so affordable now. With the affordability and awareness, industries will have to adapt. So it is first A, affordability is there. Second, awareness is there. But adapting to that, the third is probably happening and can happen faster. That is where the technology is bringing huge change. And today's technology is also used in not just equipments like CCTV or drones or IoT, but also used in data analytics. The technology used in data collection, data analytics is much higher, and that is bringing huge change in safety. And that is being felt and being used by many companies. And talking about government, you made a good point about government making rules. See, government making rules, I think, is there from 1947 onwards in this country. Probably during British rule also, government was making rules. But what is most important is today's situation. Every government, be it the state government or central government, they have got people who focus on the implementation part. Today, the leaders, or rather the people like the factory inspector, or the entire organization comes under the Ministry of Industries, and these people are much more knowledgeable. They come from an industry background, education from the industry. They are no more the typical BA economics IAS officers of the past. They are engineers. They are highly qualified engineers from best institutions, and they go into this sort of administrative profession nowadays in the government. And the way they are implementing is really, I am seeing many sharp, very knowledgeable, very detailed people sitting and leading those organizations. Recently, I was in a large manufacturing company after an incident, after an accident where couple of people died, and the way the interrogation was happening by that factory inspector was phenomenal. The extent of depth he's going. He's not just talking safety, he's talking process safety, he's talking behavioral safety, he's talking about standards, he's talking about global best practices, he's talking about the gap between standards and implementation. Everything which a global company or a global company used to talk maybe 10 years back, today the factory inspectors are able to talk, and that is again is a big change happening in India today, and I'm feeling very good about.
You mentioned about now in India we have safety managers, we have consultants who have this global knowledge, who have this understanding of the best practices around the world. So if we see or try to make a bit of a comparison between the safety industry in India and the larger Asia Pacific, so how would you share the perspective of the Asia Pacific and the India safety industry?
Yeah, actually, Amber, what I was saying is I'm not talking about the safety manager and safety or even the manufacturing sector people. I'm talking about the government people who are supposed to regulate, implement the rules and regulations. They are much more knowledgeable than what they used to be in the past. In the past, many things used to happen in the administrative office of a plant. Very rarely you see the government people going into the plant site with their safety hats on, with their safety shoes on, looking at things at the shop floor, at the point of action. That's very rare. Like you said, I have 40 years experience, and I'm saying I'm going back to 80s, 90s, even early 2000s. That used to be not a norm. The best they will do is that they'll come in their good old ambassador car and then come to the administrative office and leave from there. But today it's not. It's much more than that. And second thing is that taking that forward, these people use their power and authority to give the right directive. During peak of COVID, when power production was critical, manufacturing unit, power producing unit in my state had a incident, and within 60 days they had a repeat incident. The first incident, the factory inspector said that if the repeat incident happen and if you don't do corrective measures, I'll shut your plant down. And it was a government owned, government run unit, and 60 days repeat incident, that plant was shut for 9 months, and that was not heard of in the past because people will not use their powers to do that, and they did it. So these things are what I was talking about. And you talked about Asia Pacific region versus India comparison. uh, India, because of our democracy and our value systems, our people focus, I think even though loyalty was important, being a participative employee was important in this country, compared to China, for example, we are much better off because the practices are much more humane and much more advanced, and people don't the industry leaders don't compromise on safety to get a quality or productivity gain, which may not be the case with many of the economies which are not democracy like ours. So that's one difference. Second is that we have the advantage of language. All said and done, our manufacturing sector, industry sector still understands good English. So we have benefit of many of the good information available to us from global best practices available in English. So we don't need the pain of translation. That I think helps in our implementation. And the exposure our people have, most of our industry leaders are exposed to the Western and global best practices. And that is also another benefit we have over some of the other regions in Asia.
Taking this conversation forward, you started with this term of hiring the right people. So I want to dig a bit deeper into that. How can we bring some updates or changes so that we can hire the best people in the manufacturing industry?
Vikram, you want to take it?
No, sir, I think you are the best person to take it. So
Sure. Good. So, what's happening today? There are one positive thing and another thing which is an opportunity. The positive thing is that when educated young engineer come out and then look for a job, he even if he is hired by a manufacturing industry, when he comes in, he gets knowledgeable. He is able to compare the other options he has got, and many times that's what I am seeing. People don't stay in manufacturing sector, especially those companies where safety is not given importance to. So that's a good thing. But the bad thing is that when they come into the plant, do they bring any additive knowledge in? That is a negative aspect. So how that can be improved? So let me talk about that first, and then come to the second, the first issue second. So I strongly advocate safety getting integrated into the education system, probably starting from pre-engineering or engineering level. The 4 years people spend in engineering college, I think they have enough time to learn the global best practices in safety, irrespective of the industry. There are many things which are not unique to industry, starting from pharma to petrochemical to oil and gas to steel to mining. Everywhere, some of the safety practices are common. So, do they get that knowledge? I don't think so. At least my understanding of Indian academics, engineering, I see engineers, new engineers. I have my two sons are engineers, and I see many engineering colleges. I had opportunities to be visiting them, talking to them. I feel very unhappy that safety as a subject is not integrated into the engineering education. So when the people step into the companies, manufacturing sector, they come very raw, very green. I think that's a huge problem we need to address. So if this message goes across and industry does something about it, institutions do something about it, government does something about it, that will be a huge help. So that is how, when you have more knowledgeable people, when they come in, they become an additional pressure point to improve manufacturing sector safety. So it will work win for both. Now, let me address the first problem of hiring. In hiring, during the interviews, I think industries should, good with good safety practices, should demonstrate that to the students when they hire. Probably they are doing it as part of their value building, but I am sure they can do that value building, brand building much more. Some of the companies have done very well when it comes to ethics, for example. Their ethical practices are known and they talk about it when they go for hiring people. I'm not sure whether safety is being discussed as a unique practice by these companies when they go for hiring. Probably that will help them hire the better talent, because it is not that all industries are not good in safety. There are many industries which are good in safety. And I also feel there is lack of integration of safety people in HR. I think one possibility could be that the safety people should be part of the HR team when they go for hiring, and the HR people should be part of safety when they go to the plant. In the human resource development, safety is an important component of human resource development. But I'm not seeing that, because I see in most of the companies, HR, personal, learning development, they sit outside of safety, not in the ring of safety. Many of the best practices in learning development, because the technology thing, the involvement of technology in learning development is pretty high today, and safety can be made much more easier to learn using technology. That I'm sure, Vikram, you have some thoughts and you can talk about it. So when you can have the learning development and safety integrate so well, why not HR and safety integrate well? I'm not seeing that. HR people think safety is not their job, and safety people think HR guys don't understand it. That is a huge disconnect. That again could help your hiring issues better if this dialogue happens more, collaboration happens more.
So I have a question here. So there are some specific organizations which train people for safety. There are some ITIs and some other organizations as well. who do diploma courses and other kind of courses for safety. So, are you saying there should be an integration in the engineering degree also? Do we need another, like some kind of a curriculum in the integration with the engineering degree that we are normally getting as a BTech or MTech degree that we get? Are you suggesting that there should be a formal
Yeah,
integration?
yeah, yeah. I'm suggesting that. I suggest in every semester, if you have one subject on safety, you have got 8 semesters, right? In engineering
Right,
course, typically 4-year course.
right.
So you can cover 8 different areas
Okay,
of safety. What happens is the diploma courses today is again, it's a legacy thing. It is a past coming into now. And some people take that as a choice, but for more people, safety is not by choice. I would like to give an anecdote here. It is an old one. It is nothing to do with the the people of this millennium. But this is what I heard in early 2000, and that anecdote will help me reconfirm this. There is one gentleman by name Mr. Krishnamurthy, who was the managing director of or head of SAIL, Steel Authority of India, in 70s and 80s, probably. And then he was assigned to lead the Maruti Suzuki JV those days. It was a joint venture set by the government. And then in his first trip to Japan, he was told by the Suzuki company that you, when you go back, hire the best engineer as your safety head, which will help us set up the right best practices in our plant. This anecdote was shared by Mr. Krishnamurthy himself to me in 2007 or 8 in Chennai. So I still remember that. So I'm saying that. So Mr. Krishnamurthy came back, and then the first place he could go for a good engineer for safety is his old organization. He called up his old organization, the personnel department of that old organization, and said, "Can you suggest a good engineer for safety?" The HR person or the personal, those days it used to be, I think, P&A, personal and administration person. He said, "Sir, be clear. You can either have a good engineer or a safety guy. Usually, good engineers don't go to safety." This is the legacy we have of 80s and 90s and maybe early 2000 also. So today, how many of our good engineers choose safety as a diploma in safety as a subject of choice? There may be some, definitely there are some, I know, but not a big percentage. And even if you take that 5%, 10%, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 is too big a number, maybe 1%, 2%, who are going there with interest. There are 90%, 99% of the people left with no knowledge on safety. And they are engineers. And assuming even 20% of them go into manufacturing sector, I think 20% new engineers coming in with no knowledge on safety. You can count the number of institutes which have, I know, for example, IIT Kharagpur has a institute department for safety, and they run it very well. But I don't know how many other than Institute of Petroleum and things like that, which are specific industry related institutes, have safety as a subject. I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant. So if someone has that knowledge, that can be shared.
right, right, right. If I look at the current, the new engineers who are coming out, right? So they have, first of all, safety per se, or for that matter manufacturing per se, is is in the lower end of their job seeking area. So they would be targeting IT, or they would be targeting work from an environment like a MBA, so management role kind of a role. So they would be targeting these kind of roles because that's easier to do than a manufacturing on-site job role that they have, that requires a lot of physical activity and physical work. So probably that is the also, that's also one of the reason why we are not able to get good engineers into safety and these fields. And we are seeing a lot, whereas in US, when there talk to a lot of people there, some of the best engineers who are working in the field are also the safety engineers, because they know what are the processes that they have to follow. They follow the processes to the dot. They are familiar with all the what are the problems with a particular technology as well, because one role of the safety engineer is not just to talk about the processes but also about the technology. There are some gases which are harmful, some gases which are very harmful. Even a small leakage of that gas can cause a major, like union carbide thing happened. So some of the best engineers are the best safety engineers as well, because they understand the problem and the processes very well, and that's why they are good engineers, and that's why they are good safety engineers. So that's something that I am not seeing in India so far, and that's where I feel that's why India has to adopt technology much faster, because we are losing out on a lot of talent, and we are losing out on people who are capable of doing these things but are not taking up this as a opportunity or a job role for us. And that's where we feel that a lot of technology has to be incorporated at the early stage itself. Like even at this stage we do not have to wait for the technology to mature to a level and then we will adopt it, which is what we tend to do normally. But as we are doing with EVs, as we are doing with other sectors, in safety also we should be targeting use of extensive use of technology to overcome this challenge of not having the best people on the ground. Because that, with the help of technology we get two advantages. One is people, when they go to, they don't have, many times you, when you have the data, using that data you can analyze a lot of things and you can figure out things which an experienced engineer will figure out on the site itself. So somebody who has knowledge of that process, we can collect the data from various sensors, maybe cameras, sensors, whatever ways possible, or even manually in many cases. And that can be used to do a lot of things off the site, which is what is happening with technology, right? A lot of processes which were earlier dependent on the engineer on the ground are now taking place from the data is transferred to a team which is sitting elsewhere, and then they are doing the processing on it. So that is one of the better ways of handling these changes which are happening in our society. And yeah, so I believe yes, hiring is a challenge, and I don't see that changing over time. I don't see people changing their preferences in the upcoming future as well. But we can change our way of handling this by moving a little faster on incorporating things like technology into our work, and especially in this area which is neglected, I would say, to a large extent by, in many terms. But we can expedite that process and then make sure that we take it up faster, and more engineers from the other domain can enter into this field. So that is the
Sure. Yeah, yeah. What where there is that place where people like you, people like Amber, people like younger generation, and all of you are engineers, and the younger generation engineers can help. Is how do you guys make safety exciting?
right.
Safety today is not made exciting. When people think about safety, they think about compliance.
Yeah.
I mean, that is unfortunate. In India, still people think about compliance as safety, which is not. Safety is much more than compliance. Safety is much more knowledge, much more culture, much more business value than just compliance. So the younger generation coming out, if they think that, oh, safety means not a policeman in the factory. Today his perception of safety is एक डंडा लेके घूमने वाला policeman plant का अंदर. No, that's not safety. Safety is much more than that.
Right.
And that is where I think, how do we make safety exciting? How that I am talking about the 8 semester, one subject in each semester, is not to talk about the traditional safety, but to talk about the futuristic safety, the newer things happening, the global best practices, the technology integration, the future applicability of technology. See, India is ahead of the curve in technology, definitely. India is ahead of curve in IT, and but that is not reflected in safety and how that can happen. And that is where I think the focus of the generation, especially several startups getting into safety, they should start looking at it that way. Again, it cannot be just a good invention done and convert that invention to business. What do we learn from the noble soul that departed a couple of days back? Whatever he did, he gave back to the society much more than what the Tata Group took. from the society. And that's the way he was doing it. So the inventions of today, the inventors of today, should start walking his footpath and his footsteps, and then see how we can give that excitement back to the society.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I would like to go to the technology part. So now this is the exciting part, which is upcoming. So I want to learn from Vikram, like what kind of trends is he observing in the industry with respect to digitization and the upcoming new technologies, AI, IoT, even AR, VR, which are very upcoming in the manufacturing sector. So Vikram, if you can share some things about these things.
Yeah, if I talk about the technologies that are coming up, every major invention which is or introduction of any major technology that is happening is getting slowly coming to the field of safety as well. For example, if you look at Gen AI right now, right? So when Gen AI has started entering into the safety field, so a lot of paperwork and a lot of other things that people used to do. So one of the major problems that a lot of organizations have is that safety becomes, after some time, it's all about permitting, giving permits, and then managing the permits, and then ensuring that people are following the permits and filling up the paperwork and all. So a lot of that becomes like a cumbersome activity for a person to do it manually, right? So a lot of LLMs and a lot of other things are being used actively to reduce that amount of manual work that people have to do for generating a permit, for generating a lot of on ground reports. So that is a trend that I'm seeing, and a lot of companies are working on it, and a lot of innovation is happening in that side as well. The next level, which is still a work in progress, is the video analytics part. So a lot of companies are working in this field, especially if you go to the west. A lot of companies have developed beautiful solutions around, let's say, construction safety. So they have built, like, how do we integrate the safety with the BIM models that are there for that particular site, which is unique and which is pretty awesome. For example, if you have a set of cameras in the premise, you can create, or if there is some kind of a way to create a 3D model of the work that is ongoing, you can compare it with the original 3D model which is there as per the architecture firm's design, right? And then you can see how much work is happening, where are the safety hazards which are present, for example, where are the falling hazards, and then you can ensure if the scaffolding is put correctly and everything, railings are put correctly in that position, so that there is no fall happening in that area. So that is the level of innovation that is happening right now in the field of video analytics, you and using that to prevent accidents from happening. So a lot of innovation is happening in that side also, but it's currently again a work in progress. It's not like there are fully blown solutions which are active everywhere. It's something that is gaining ground, and as we develop more and more complex AI models for handling these kind of things, this will grow much faster. Then the world of, like, Oculus, AR, VR. So these are again very useful tools for training. So a person who has never been in a unsafe environment, when he is supposed to work in an unsafe environment, you cannot directly ask them to go to this height and do that work. With an AR VR setup, you can do that kind of a training of a person and show him what exactly will happen, how it will look like, and what will be the end result, without him actually going to that place, and without him actually, like, without no inherent safety risk of that particular training activity itself, right? So that
Right,
is
right.
again very positive thing that is changing right now. A lot of development has to happen in that sense also, because for many of the works, the AI model is relatively constant. For example, for height work and all, you can do that, but for some of the other activities which are very specific to certain organizations, you may not be able to do it directly. For example, it might be too costly to create a 3D model or 3D environment for that particular role. So there are pros and cons for each, but it becomes a good starting point for anyone to have an introduction into how things are happening on the ground, and how you can keep yourselves safe, and to put them in that kind of a situation where they have to understand the process and understand why we are doing this, right? So majorly the issue is, like, earlier, to do that you have to spend a lot of time training the person. You have, let's say, if you want to do a height training for the person, you have to set up a scaffold, then you have to ask the person to climb, and then do that activity multiple times so that he understands, okay, and it becomes a part of his muscle memory, right? But with the help of AR, VR, and other tools that are coming up, this can become a part of their normal work activity very quickly, because you can do it relatively in a closed environment without the inherent risk or the cost associated with setting up the extensive setup there to train the person. So these are some of the changes that I have seen are coming up. A lot of other changes are also, as we were discussing, let's say in a confined area. Earlier, many of the deaths were happening in a confined area and leakage is happening in that environment, right? And so people do not have an idea of what exactly is happening, which gas is coming out, and then they will be working in that area and suddenly the gas leak will happen and then they will not know what to do. So there also again technologies, so these sensors again are adding a lot of value. So we can place sensors in an environment where the sensors will monitor what is happening around you. So rather than you manually checking it, the sensors will monitor and then give you an alert. So that is to help you prevent and to make sure that like such accidents do not happen. Such so these kind of innovations are happening right now, and I'm sure as we go ahead, a lot of these changes will accelerate. And in next 10 years, as we see a transformation happening in the manufacturing sector right now, especially in the automobile industry, with the transition happening from IC to EV, a lot of digitization and a lot of activities will see in the safety field as well. So a lot of transformation is already happening, and but very soon it is going to pick up, and we are going to see a very different world when we move into the next decade.
Sure. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Actually, changes to happen, I think people also have to start looking at safety closer to security rather than safety being closer to environment. In my opinion, again, the past safety thinking was safety and environment were close. If you really look at it, because the origin of safety predominantly was from the chemical sector. Yeah, so EHS, environment, health and safety, but health is medical professional. So even though typically the doctor reports to the safety manager, but other than his leave card, nothing else goes from the doctor to the safety manager, typically in many companies. So EHS may H was sort loosely connected. E and safety and environment were connected more. But if you really look at it, many of your new systems which are coming, that comes closer to security. So if people start connecting safety and security and then learn from security for safety and learn from safety for security, probably there could be a paradigm shift there. And again, some of the technologies which are helping people to be secure can help them to be safe also. So that's what I mean here. So that is probably your way of looking at technology integration happening there. Again, coming back, many times the solutions, technology solutions, stay with the technology innovators. But for that solution to reach the user, at the user level, awareness, knowledge is more important. And again, that is why I think taking safety at the engineering college level will help much more to make a transition in India, which we are looking at.
So, do you think we are living in a world where people are, like live in a world with Instagram? We live in a world where people are getting shots and shots as in short clips, reels, and all, right? And so they are more passionate about these things because it's easier for them to understand. It's not involving any learning per se, right? There are nuances there. I'm not saying that like it's very easy, but relatively, if you see if somebody becomes a good engineer after doing a study for 10 years 20 years of a particular subject, and then he is considered an expert in that subject, that is not the case right now with any of the new systems. So do you feel that there is a reason for, is that the reason why a lot of people are not going for a little hardcore engineering kind of a role, or is like people are moving away from that hardcore engineering kind of a domain to a little bit more easier domain which they think that they can easily work on, and it looks good, right? It looks like a, how should I say it, it looks like an easy thing to do, everyone can relate to it. So it's something that if we see somebody, some comedian making a joke and making a person laugh on a video, and we see that okay, I sit in a group of 10 people and I can also make somebody laugh, it becomes easier to correlate to that, and it's okay, I can also do that. And that, instead of putting in effort into learning something and understanding something, we put more effort into, people start putting more effort into other things. So do you think that is also something that has to change, or I'm just your
Yeah, some
perspective?
of the
Things are
yeah,
I have my
yeah,
own
yeah,
views. It's not
yeah,
like
yeah, sure, sure, sure. See, when we talk about perspectives and when we talk about thoughts, again, I go back to one interaction I had with one Mr. Prasad Menon. You all might have heard his name. He was once the CEO of Tata Chemicals, and he was then the CEO of Tata Motors also. He's still probably continuing in the Tata group in some place somewhere. He must be what, at least in 70s now. He must be in the 70 age group now. A person with strong experience from ICI, and then he was also in very one of the most respected leaders in my mind, and I've seen him and I've learned quite a lot from him. He was telling, we were talking about the IT sector attracting people. I think this happened around 2009, 2010 time frame. And he was telling that he is expecting in 15 to 20 years a transformation in India where the manufacturing sector will top, not IT. And he said people will earn double in the manufacturing sector. Today, people are moving towards IT because a situation will happen to manufacturing sector in India, and he predicted that will happen now or maybe 5 years from now. I hope that will happen soon because if the government pushes so much on manufacturing, India is becoming an important player in the global supply chain. More and more manufacturing activity. I'm not talking about only in electronics. When I say hardcore manufacturing, we talk about everything beyond electronics: mines, steels, chemicals, petrochemicals, pharma, all this manufacturing sector will need talent. So probably they need to probably double the pay they are giving to their employees compared to what IT sector is getting. If the pay is double and the facilities are equal, and I'm sure the guys will look at it more favorably. And if there is an excitement created from safety, probably some of these good engineers will move in manufacturing towards safety. So let us hope that will happen sometime.
Sir, I have a thought. I was thinking, suppose I am a recent graduate from a top engineering college of the country, and I have a choice to join Aditya Birla Group, Grasim's manufacturing plant, or join Infosys or TCS. So this is a real case example. It was a choice to me in 2012 when I graduated. I took the choice of TCS, and we are at the same forefront of discussion that why people are doing that. So I thought TCS or IT industry gives you, as a normal human being, you get a AC office, you get basic facilities, and if you are in a plant in Grasim's, or you have to go through the daily heat, you have to work a lot. It makes you think that I am lazy, so I'm choosing the IT industry. But I think we are talking on the same thought process.
what was the
This
reason
was
for
the
you not
reason
choosing
that
Grasim?
for TCS, I'm getting an air conditioned office, right? I don't have to walk for 5 kilometers every day in the sun. You know,
Right.
that was one of the reasons.
One of the reasons, what I'm saying
But
is that I'm just hypothetically, Asim was giving 2x CTC versus
That's a good
Infosys.
point. Now that's the point where,
If that would have happened, if that would have happened, what would have been the choice? 2x.
right,
Whatever Infosys paid, Grasim gives 2x.
right. So yeah, I don't know.
What could have been? Go back 12 years. What would have been the choice? What would have been the path you would have chosen that time?
Yes, sir. So if that was the scenario, I would have been attracted to go to the the hardcore path of my industry. I was into instrumentation and control engineering, so I would have taken that path.
See, actually, what was happening
Yeah.
in 2012, this probably was what happening. When 100 people come out of an engineering college, 60 of them will have a ready job in IT sector. IT was booming in 2012, and 60 will go there. So manufacturing will balance out of the first top 60 will go there, and then whatever is the 40, maybe the first 20 or 10 will go to manufacturing. That was what was happening. And manufacturing was okay with that because they need only 10 and they have 40. So they can choose anybody among the 40. And typically, people, managers those days will discount the college education. Kaisabi, he is green. So we have to teach him. So whether we teach the top notch guy or a middle notch guy, it's okay. It's immaterial. And we also get at a better cost. That probably would have been the approach. Probably because I too was involved in hiring those days, and probably this was the thought process. But today, that 60 is not happening. It's drying up. And if the emoluments becomes 2x, won't that change the outlook of the people, the young generation coming out?
Vikram,
You are on mute.
you're on.
You are on mute, Vikram.
I think it is already changing right now. If you see the salary structures of TCS or any of these big firms, IT firms, what they were paying 10 years ago, I think the starting salary still is the same, right? So I think it was whatever X lakh amount they were paying at that point of time. They haven't increased it over last 10 years, 20 years, I guess. So the structure has probably this is already happening. What you are suggesting, the manufacturing job, because they have increased their salaries. I am familiar with what companies like Unilever and a lot of other companies are paying. So they have increased their salaries, and IT sector is now falling behind. So that is definitely true. And also regarding the environment, working environment nowadays. So I've been to so many factories. So it's not like hard labor. It's not like you have to stay in the sun for a long time. Many of the factories have very beautiful offices. Most of the factories have very beautiful offices, especially for officers and all. Still, like people who are working out, who are like laborers and all, they still have to work in the sun, and they still have a hard labor to do. But officers have very good working environment compared to what it was earlier. Also, it has improved a lot, and I don't see, like, from this point onwards, if anybody is watching this podcast and thinking that okay, that is still the scenario that you have to do hard labor if you're getting into that kind of a role. It's not true.
Actually,
So you are getting into
actually,
a good working environment, and you are getting, like, one of the other major advantages of working in manufacturing sector from my understanding is that you can work in an environment which is much more peaceful and much more away from the city life. Now our cities are becoming more and more unlivable. IT is in those cities which are facing with all the major issues that we have in an urban environment, urban India setup. Water, road, traffic, all the other pollution, all these issues are faced very commonly in these sites, right? But it is not the case if you are going to any manufacturing sector kind of a role. So there would be other challenges. I'm not saying everything is green there, but it's still not that bad as what people
yeah.
expect it to be.
But when it comes to safety, it is not the office who are exposed or face the impact of an incident. It's more the people in the front line, the asset facing employee level people. And that is where I think most of the issues happen today. And that is where a lot of improvement are even necessary. Yes, companies would have built their administrative offices air conditioned, but when it comes to plant side, many of the large companies today still live with that legacy situation, and I think that is where we are not able to attract the right people. So, an engineer need not be in the office. An engineer working in the plant. At the plant facility gives me much more value for his engineering qualification than sitting in the office in front of computer. So that way, I think if companies have to attract the right skill people, I mean, engineering is one skill, could be even an ITI type of person. High skilled ITI person is sometimes much more value to an organization than a graduate engineer. For attracting the high skill ITI person, organizations, manufacturing organizations have to start looking at safety differently, and that will be important, necessary, and probably inevitable the next 3 to 5 years.
Nice. Great, great conversation. So, as we move towards the closing stages of our podcast, I would like to ask for the final remarks from both our panelists. Vikram, you can go ahead, go first this time.
Yeah, the discussion that we had mostly like revolved around the hiring practices and the introduction of technology to overcome some of the challenges that the industry is currently facing because of not having the best quality of engineers coming into the domain, right? I think that is something that we definitely, we as an industry, has to look into. And these are some of the real challenges that an industry will face, especially because India is looking at accelerating the growth of its manufacturing sector. You cannot build a global superpower based on just services. Like, it's very hard to be dependent on other powers or other countries to fulfill the basic manufacturing needs, and then we want to become the global superpower. That's definitely not going to happen. So if India is looking at uh, becoming the best in the world, as in terms of power or status, manufacturing is one sector that it cannot avoid. So manufacturing is a sector which gives employment to the maximum percentage of people, apart from agriculture, which is not because of the right reasons. But manufacturing is one of the major source of employment for a lot of people. Lot of the wages and all that is distributed through the manufacturing sector is much more widely spread out than in an IT sector kind of a role. So now you need to look into these sectors more rigorously. So you need to get involved into these sectors and make sure that they are getting accelerated. And a lot of government policies are favoring that. And a lot of shift is happening in the government regulations also. But just focusing on productivity and just focusing on matrices which are improving the productivity does not make a global power in the terms of manufacturing. Also, you need to set up processes, you need to set up things which can enable you to make sure that you are not just growing in terms of numbers but also in terms of quality. So quality can only improve if you are focusing on improving the processes, improving the quality of life of people while they are doing their work. That is the only way to improve the quality of the workforce. And for that, India has an advantage that it has a good healthy population which is involved in technology through IT and other sectors, and they can use that as a medium to enable the manufacturing sector to take a great leap forward and go into a domain or into an era where the technology becomes a daily part of the manufacturing setup. It's not just limited to the machines which are there, but also the processes that are there. They can also be monitored and built around the technologies that we have, so that we can accelerate the growth that we are having right now. So that is from my point of view, what I understood from today's discussion.
Thank you, Vikram. Ganesh sir, your final remarks.
Yeah. Yeah, my final remarks are the what we can do for future for in this podcast. Two things which I think I want to see thoughts, because people listening to this podcast also can come back and contribute to us to make it possible. First, we discussed today a bit about academics and what academics is doing with respect to safety. Academics, we were focusing more on engineering. But I think that is one subject where we can dwell a little more. Probably a 1 hour focused discussion on institutions, what sort of things are happening, a knowledge sharing on what is happening with respect to academics involvement in safety could be valued. Maybe many universities are there. People who are listening to this podcast will have some idea on who is doing what. So if they can give that sort of information, we can try and connect with them and then bring more value to this business of this. Because otherwise, my knowledge is what I see, and Vikram knowledge is what he see and hear. So it is better we get more inputs on that. So that I would like to dwell more. Second is similarly with respect to technology, probably we can, instead of keeping technology as a single term and then trying to talk everything under it, maybe we can go a little more deeper, delve deeper. What does IoT do in safety? Could be a 1 hour discussion. And many things IoT does, data analytics, other type of IT tools, AR we discussed. We talked about training and things like e-learning, mobile learning, how learning is getting transformed and how safety learning can get transformed using IT. Like one thing which is happening in many companies today is the safety learning is too generic. What is more value is if they focus on job skill based safety learning. If it is a fitter, how can he do his fitter job safely? If he is a forklift operator, how can he operate the forklift safely? That is the type of depth they should have that knowledge. And so that sort of a job skill based safety or job skill related to safety will be an area where we need to dwell in with respect to safety training. That's happening in some companies, for example. So each of this technology can may have opportunities and maybe already somebody is doing something but is not visible to others. Drones, we talked in the last podcast, I think the one before, we discussed about value of drones in improving safety. Drones are being used in industry, but how can they be used for improving safety? So something like that. So if somebody has a contribution to make, if they can reach you and tell you this is what something they want to talk, maybe we can connect and then we can take it forward. Those are my thoughts. So because we can build on what we discussed today if we get more knowledge coming from other people. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ganesh sir, for those feedback. And this is also an opportunity for our listeners to send in their questions. And if they know someone, they can approach us on LinkedIn. We will connect back with you guys, and then we can take the conversation forward. Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Ganesh sir, for your time today. So let's close this and hopefully talk to
Thank
you again
you.
soon. Thank you.
Thank you.